Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo of Doc Sports here with your opening line report for week 1 of the college football season. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe to Doc's YouTube channel, and you will be alerted every day when new material is posted at this YouTube channel, including free plays, other analysis videos across a variety of sports. It really is a lot of great information if sports betting and sports information is your thing. So, okay. We're going to do an opening line report where I'm just going to kind of go through the board, the college football board, and talk about some of the numbers and lines that have moved or that are interesting to me, or just kind of give my thoughts on what's going on for the week ahead in some of these games. I'll be doing an opening line report for the NFL as well. And this one is going to be a little bit different, this college football, because these numbers have been up for a couple of months. Like they've been up there for a while. So they've had time to ebb and flow based on a lot of different factors versus during the season when, college football lines are going to be posted on Sundays. And then there's going to be those knee-jerk reaction. You're going to see a lot of movement Mondays and Tuesdays, and then lines will kind of settle as we get closer to kickoff time. So, my goal here is just to help inform you, make you aware of certain line movements, maybe why they're happening. Other ones I just want to put on your radar because maybe I don't know why a line movement is happening, and you could just kind of follow it with me throughout the week. So, as always, the goal of this is just to inform and make you a smarter, better. All right, we're going to get started college football week 1. Again, no more week 0, no more like false starts or almost being there. Full college football card this weekend, and it starts on Thursday, August 28th. Remember that Doc Sports, we release our football plays at 6 p.m. Eastern time on every Thursday. That's when you will have our picks for the weekend. And then also don't forget that we do Doc's Football Release Party. It's a show on this YouTube channel from 6 to 7 Eastern time once those picks go live. So make sure to join me for that. I bring in a bunch of different handicappers and we just talk shop for an hour. I think that's pretty good. So, okay, Thursday, August 28th. First game that jumped out at me here for this opening line report is Ohio plus 14.5 at Rutgers. Now, this game opened with Rutgers minus 10.5. They have been getting all of the action in this game, and this number has moved 4 full points. So it's over 2 touchdowns. Key numbers are completely different in college football compared to, say, the NFL, where the distribution of results is a little bit more static. But it is interesting that they made this more than a 2-touchdown line, that it drove up that high because of all of the action coming in on Rutgers. And it makes sense. I mean, Ohio, new coach, even though he was their offensive coordinator and did coach them in their bowl game last year, Brian Smith, taking over a relatively new team. Ohio's had success. They've had 10 or more wins in 3 straight seasons. They won their first MAC title in nearly 60 years. They're a pretty good MAC team that's going to be going to Rutgers. Now, Rutgers finished last year on a 4-1 against the spread run, 3-2 in their last 5 games. They did lose their bowl game. And this is Greg Schiano's 6th year here in this phase 2 of his time with Rutgers. This is Schiano's reboot, retool, sequel, if you will. And this is year 6. So are they going to break through? Are they not? He has 4 starters back on the offensive line, veteran quarterback, solid defense. Rutgers has gone 10-2 against the spread the last 4 years in the non-conference, including 4-2 as double-digit favorite. So Schiano's done a good job of laying the wood when he needs to. So big line movement there. We'll see what it does the rest of the week. We'll see if this gets up to like 16 or so before kickoff. All right, the other game on Thursday that was interesting to me was this East Carolina at NC State. Real rivalry game here. Okay, this number opened with East Carolina as a 12.5-point underdog. That number has come down to 11.5. Now, if you will remember, and most of you won't, frankly, these two teams played in the Military Bowl last December. East Carolina scored a come-from-behind win as an underdog. They had an 86-yard touchdown run with about a minute and a half left in that game to win 26-21. They rushed for 326 yards that game. That was East Carolina just ramming it down NC State's throat. Also, interesting to note about that game is after it was over, there was a big fight between the two teams. East Carolina was trying to run out the clock. NC State was taking some cheap shots. And, look, this is what you get with rivalry games. So NC State is at home. They are playing with revenge. They are going to be angry about what East Carolina did to them. But, it's still a lot of points for a rivalry game. And East Carolina has had a lot of success in this series. They're actually 4-3 straight up. They've won 4 of the 7 meetings between these two Carolina schools since 2010. And they're 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 against NC State. So this is definitely going to be one of the more interesting games on Thursday night for the full kickoff day. Probably the best game of the day, or at least the one with the most name recognition and probably the most national relevance, is we have Nebraska versus Cincinnati. All right. This game is going to be played at Arrowhead, so it's on a neutral site. Now, Nebraska should have an advantage with the crowd there, but it is on a neutral site at Arrowhead. Now, what is interesting about this number is not only is this the marquee game of the day, but this number is at 6.5, and it has stayed at 6.5 all summer. That is despite the fact that 80% of the action has come in on Nebraska. Nebraska, they're the darling here. They're the team with a little bit more hype around them, more expectations coming into this game. But that number hasn't moved, and I don't know if it will. If it hasn't moved by now with 80% of the early action, barring some just major money move on Nebraska, I don't think we're going to get this at over a touchdown. If anything, it might come down, really. Cincinnati's a pretty good team. Good team. Scott Satterfield, like him as a coach. Solid little underdog. I think that they're going to come to play in this game, and it's going to be a really good quarterback matchup. Brendan Sorsby for Cincinnati, again, veteran guy, going up against Dylan Raiola, who was a top 3 recruit 2 years ago for Nebraska. Started as a true freshman, was solid, was up and down a little bit, turned the ball over quite a bit. But, hey, that's what you're going to get with freshman quarterbacks, right? Well, now it's year 2. He's a guy who's going to have NFL draft hype eventually. We will see if he can get this win and cover this number against what I think is going to be kind of a feisty Cincinnati team. All right. On Friday, August 29th, second day of games, we have UNLV Sam Houston State. Now, I've already talked about Sam Houston State football more in the last week than I probably will all season because they were one of the week 0 participants. This number opened up with UNLV on the road here, minus 13.5. It instantly dropped to minus 10.5. Apparently, people were not impressed with UNLV, who almost lost outright to Idaho State as a 30-point favorite. That number was all over the board. UNLV opened at 23.5, 24.5, jumped up to 27.5. I saw it was at 30 by kickoff, and UNLV was never close to covering in that game. In fact, they were losing 31-24 to an FCS school in the fourth quarter of that game. They were fortunate to win that game. Now they're playing Sam Houston State. Now, Sam Houston State did lose to Western Kentucky, 41-24. Shout out to the people that had Western Kentucky on our site last week that cashed in on that. I know that was a 5-unit winner for Strike Point Sports, and a couple other people I think were on that game as well. But that game was close. Sam Houston State did not get run out of the building. They lost by 17, but they were actually up 24-20 late in that game before they kind of threw up on themselves in the fourth quarter. So interesting underdog value here, and that's what the early money and maybe some of the sharps that help push this number down. But a 3-point line movement like that right after this one opens kind of tells the tale what the market's thinking of UNLV right now. All right, huge game. One of the bigger games of the weekend, frankly, is taking place on Friday, and that's Auburn at Baylor. Auburn is a road favorite here, minus 2.5, and this is a true road game for Auburn. This game is taking place in Waco, and Auburn, by virtue of, just being an SEC team, they are favored on the road. That is despite a slight majority, but still majority betting action on this game coming in on Baylor. This one goes off at 8 o'clock on Friday, and again, it's just a huge game for both teams. Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat. Dave Aranda at Baylor, you got to think he's on the hot seat as well. Also, quite a departure from Auburn. They've opened up with cupcakes each of the last 4 years. Now they're playing a real big boy school. This is also one of those games that, when it comes playoff time, when it comes time to determine who gets those final bids, final seeds, these are the games that the selection committee is going to take into account. Not maybe Baylor and Auburn are one of the teams that are jostling for position, but just in terms of relative conference strength, that's going to be a big issue going into this year's playoffs. Is who's the best conference? Who deserves more teams? The Big Ten got more than the SEC last year. Blah blah blah. There's going to be a lot of conference whining, but it's really games like this Auburn Baylor game that's going to go long. Like it's going to have national ramifications down the road. As well as short-term ramifications. One of these two teams is going to earn a really nice win to open the year, and one of these two hot seat coaches is going to feel a little bit more of that heat if they lose this game. So Auburn holding firm as a -2.5 road favorite there at Baylor. Another really good game that's going on that night is Georgia Tech going out to Colorado. Another road favorite. This game is taking place in Colorado. Georgia Tech, little ACC sleeper. If you don't know about Haynes King, you will. Very good quarterback, very good Georgia Tech team. I think they won 3 games last year, 2 games. They beat Florida State, who was in the top 10 when they beat them. They beat Miami when they were in the top 10, and Georgia Tech knocked them off. And then they almost beat Georgia. Should have beat Georgia. Some questionable calls in that game cost them against Georgia. If you remember correctly, that was the 8 overtime game that Georgia Tech took a top 10 Georgia team, top 5 Georgia team, actually, at the time. So, Georgia Tech proved last year that they can play. They can play with the big boys. They can beat the big boys. Now going on the road to face Colorado, which is in, phase 2 of the Deion Sanders era. No Shador, no Travis Hunter. They are rebuilding, retooling, reloading, brought in a lot of really talented transfers, just like they have each of the last 2 seasons. But what is their identity going to unfold as without it being Shador's team anymore? They have Caden Salter, veteran quarterback from Liberty, that they brought in to run this team. I think that Colorado is going to be a little bit more physical. But hey, Georgia Tech doesn't mind physical. So Tech getting a lot of respect here, being a road favorite against a Colorado team that we really don't know what we're going to see out of this group coming in there. So Tech firm -4 favorite, getting 75% of the action. We'll see if that number comes down at all. I don't think it's going to go past 4, frankly. I will be stunned if this number keeps going up. But if it holds firm, even with all the action coming in on Georgia Tech, that means that bigger money coming in on Colorado. So we'll see how that goes. And then finally on Friday, last game that I wanted to talk about was Western Michigan at Michigan State. This number opened at 17.5. It's up to 20.5. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes a little bit higher. Michigan State, this is year 2 with Jonathan Smith, who came over from Oregon State, and Aiden Childs, the quarterback that he actually brought from Oregon State and started last year as a sophomore. It was a tough year for Michigan State last year, and they were 0-3 against the spread as a favorite last year, so I don't expect them to be favored a ton this season, and we had them laying 3 touchdowns here against Western Michigan, another one of those tricky MAC teams, so we'll see how that one shakes out. All right, Saturday is the meat of the college football schedule, and we will rip through some of these games. Nevada plus 44.5 at Penn State, one of the largest numbers on the board this weekend. Look, Penn State, you don't need me to tell you about them because everybody and their sister is talking about them right now. They seem to be everybody's pick to win the national championship, and for good reason. Very good team. We'll get it started here. Can they cover this big number against an overmatched Nevada team? I mean, 44.5, 45, that's a big number, but if Penn State is the team that everybody thinks they are, they should be able to go out and throw up a 56-3 type win or something like that. We'll see if they can get past this number. All right, this one jumped out at me. Old Dominion plus 22.5 at Indiana. Again, I'm not going to talk a ton about Indiana because everybody's talked about Indiana over the past 10, 12 months in college football. What is interesting to me about this game is that Indiana actually opened as a 23.5 point favorite. All right, they were a money machine last year. They were just an ATM machine for bettors last year, Indiana was. Open as 23.5 point favorites in this game. They are taking 80% of the action. Indiana is, which makes sense, right? Like all they did was cash tickets. They have a very good team again this year. It's a new team, brought in a lot of transfers, but that's what Kurt Cignetti does, and all that guy does is cash tickets over the last 3 years. This number has actually gone down. It's gone down to 22.5. So it's an interesting reverse line movement here, a true reverse line movement, because again, majority of the action coming in on IU, who is at home, but the line is going the other way. Old Dominion has been kind of a scrappy underdog in roles like this. They're 8-2 against the spread versus Power 4 teams dating back to 2018. So it'll be interesting to see if we get some big bettors or just enough public action on Indiana to push this one back up. But if it keeps coming down, a little bit of a red flag line movement there with Old Dominion. All right, New Mexico plus 36.5 at Michigan. This one actually went up 2 points after it was announced that Sherrod Brown was going to be suspended, the Michigan coach, for the nonsense with Connor Stallions. Again, not going to really go back into that, but is interesting that the number went up, even though they won't have their coach on the sideline. I guess people figure that Michigan's going to be motivated. They're going to use this suspension as motivation to just whoop up on a New Mexico team that is completely rebuilding, new coach, new quarterback, new everything, and they're not going to be very good. So, wouldn't be surprised to see Michigan send a message here. All right, Syracuse, my alma mater, versus Tennessee. This one's being played in my backyard, actually. Not literally, but Mercedes-Benz. This one is taking place at the Benz here in Atlanta. Opened with Tennessee minus 12.5. It has been bet up to Tennessee minus 14. Syracuse had a quarterback battle this fall. They announced their starter for this game, and I thought that might move the number, having a little certainty there. It did not. So Syracuse been a very good underdog team over the last few years. They're catching 2 touchdowns against the Vols. All right, Florida Atlantic plus 14.5 at Maryland. This is another one of those ones where it opened at 17.5 with a slight majority of action on Maryland. It has since dropped 3 full points from 17.5 to its current line of 14.5. And now we actually have a slight majority of action on Florida Atlantic. So a lot of people not buying into Maryland, myself included in that one. I don't really like their coach. Okay, biggest game of the day, one of the biggest games of the year in college football, and really interesting number here to break down on the line report. That's Texas plus 2 at Ohio State. Noon kickoff. So we're diving right into it, right into the action at noon. This is the big noon kickoff for Fox. This one is at the Shoe in Columbus. Now, this number opened with Ohio State minus 3. It has come down to minus 2. And it makes sense because nearly 90% of the action and the money are all coming in on Texas in this game. Everyone is piling on Texas. This is the first time in college football history that the number 1 team in the country has been posted as an underdog in their opening game. Think about that for a second. First number 1 ranked team in modern college football history to be an underdog in their season opener. And that makes sense, right? If you're the number 1 team, you're the best team in theory, right? Well, the odds makers obviously don't think so because they have Ohio State as the favorite here. 2 new quarterbacks, Arch Manning obviously for Texas, and true freshman Julian Sayin getting the start for Ohio State. So it's going to be interesting how the 2 young quarterbacks, obviously Arch Manning has more experience being in college as he has been and playing in some significant games for Texas last year, getting real steps. But he's on the road. True road game here at Ohio State. Very tough place to play. So we'll see how that one shakes out, and we will see if Texas maintains that underdog status or if they get enough money pushing them to where this one goes down to maybe Texas plus 1 or maybe even a pick by game time. But this is going to be a line to watch all week. All right, next up, Marshall plus 39.5 at Georgia. I only point this out because Georgia's another national champion, one of the favorites this year, and this is one of the largest spreads on the board. Okay, sticking in the SEC, another fun little line here is we have Toledo plus 7.5 at Kentucky. 12:45 kickoff. This is in Lexington, so true home game for Kentucky. Now, this line opened with Kentucky minus 11.5. 88% of the action on this game is coming on Toledo. Everybody's betting this Toledo in this game. And what is interesting is that this is almost an identical situation as last year when Toledo went to Mississippi State. They opened as an 11.5 point underdog. That number got bet down to 9, and then Toledo won at Mississippi State last year. Now, that was a week 3 game. It wasn't a season opener. But Toledo, the best team in the MAC, best program in the MAC by far over the last several years, last decade really, They also nearly won at Illinois as an underdog 2 years ago. They were +9 in that game, and they lost 30-28. So the last 2 years, Toledo won at Mississippi State, almost won at Illinois. Can they do the same thing this year at Kentucky? Obviously, the early betting public thinks so because they are catching almost 90% of the action in this game, and it has drove the number down 4 full points against the SEC team. So Toledo, they have their starting quarterback, starting running back, their top receiver all back from last year. So, Kentucky is definitely on upset alert. Is that the way that this one is going to go? And is this number going to drop even more in Toledo's favor? All right, we got Colorado +20 at Washington. Hawaii +16.5 at Arizona. Now this number, here we have a Hawaii team, another one of these teams that played in week 0. Obviously the public was not super impressed with their last second win over Stanford. They were down 10-0 in that game. They came back to win 23-20. Again, shout out to the guys at Doc Sports that had top play winners on Hawaii over the weekend. But this number was released with Arizona -10.5. Instantly got bet up to 16.5. Some of that, I think, has to do with the fact that Mike Alejandro, I know I said that wrong, but basically Hawaii's quarterback hurt his ankle in that game against Stanford. Now, he did come back and play in the fourth quarter, and he was able to lead them to those 2 field goal drives that led to the win for Hawaii and the cover, but he was limping around noticeably. So maybe he's questionable for this game. That could drive some of the line movement if he doesn't play, can't play, or if they if they get behind in this game and they decide that they're not going to play him the whole game to risk, injuring that ankle further. That could have something to do with it. It also could have to do with the fact that, again, Hawaii wasn't very good against a very good Stanford team, and they were kind of fortunate to win that game. So Hawaii catching almost 17 points 1 week after being a favorite at home, both against, Power 4 conference, former Pac-12 opponents. Stanford, obviously, in the SEC, Arizona in the Big 12. So tough opening stretch here for Hawaii. Okay, talking about former Pac-12 foes, Utah -6.5 at UCLA. UCLA was kind of sneaky good as an underdog last year under Deshaun Foster. It's now his second season. UCLA was better than I thought they were going to be last year. Obviously, Utah was worse than everyone thought that they were going to be. They were picked to win the Big 12. Quarterback injuries and issues, and injuries really all over the roster led to them having just an absolutely terrible season. We will see if they will be able to bounce back with their new offensive coordinator and quarterback, along with getting a lot of guys healthy. But Utah, healthy road favorite here at UCLA, -6.5. This game opened with Utah -3.5. Majority money is coming in on Utah, even though most of the tickets have been written for UCLA. So this number has moved from 3.5 to 6.5. We will see if it will continue its upward trajectory this week. Next, we have Northwestern +5.5 at Tulane. Very interesting game. Also, Tulane lost its starting quarterback. He got bought out by Duke, is now starting at Duke. Tulane, another team that people expected to take a step back under a new coach last year. They didn't. They were very good again last year. Can they continue this momentum for the best 3-year run in Tulane football history, basically? But Tulane opened, they are at home, okay? This game is being played in Tulane's home stadium. They opened as a 7-point favorite. That number's come down. Northwestern's now just +5.5. Obviously, some sharps jumped on that field goal and pushed that number down. And it wasn't a quick move. It didn't go from 7 right to 5.5 like everybody jumped on Northwestern. So now the books are trying to get some of that money back. Went to 6.5, then went to 6 to 5.5. So it's been slowly but surely creeping down against Tulane heading into this game. 80% of the action at this point, as of Monday, coming in on the Wildcats. All right, weird, kind of quirky game on the board that jumped out at me. Mississippi State, who we mentioned, lost to Toledo at home last year. They are 11.5-point favorites at Southern Miss. So in-state game, I guess we'll call them rivals because they're both from the same state. It's not really a rivalry. I mean, Mississippi State's in the SEC. Southern Miss, isn't very good, frankly. But Mississippi State actually opened as a 14.5-point favorite, and they've been catching 70% of the action in this game. So we have a reverse line movement here. This number has dropped 3 full points. You got to think that this is a Super Bowl game for Southern Miss. I mean, getting big in-state rival school SEC opponent to come to Southern Miss, getting this one on campus. This is the first time that they've hosted a game in this series since 2015. Southern Miss actually lost that game 34-16. Southern Miss has lost 6 straight to Mississippi State, and they're only 1-5 against the spread in those games. So they really haven't put up a fight in this series. That's why Mississippi State, even though the number's coming down, is still a pretty healthy favorite there. Southern Miss is actually 2-6 against the spread against SEC teams, but Southern Miss does have a great volleyball arena. I think I read that somewhere. If you're not sure what that reference is, you can go ahead and look that one up. Okay, speaking of SEC powerhouses like Mississippi State, we actually have Alabama going to Florida State. Alabama laying 13 points. Again, on the road, 3:30 kickoff, in that heat, in that humidity, which shouldn't bother Alabama. It's not like that's exactly a frosty palace. But still, this summer I thought it was odd that Alabama was laying this big of a number. Florida State was awful last year. We all know about that. They were awesome the year before. There is talent on this Seminoles roster, and this is kind of a make-or-break year for Mike Norvell. So you got to expect that they're going to give it all in this game. And 13 points from an Alabama team that was kind of sketchy on the road last year really just does feel like a lot. Now, this game opened at 12.5, so it's actually gone up. We're even seeing some 13.5s, 90% of the action on Alabama. So everyone's on Alabama, kind of justifying this number. I can't take Florida State. I just can't, because it came out this summer that Tommy Castellanos, formerly of Boston College, guy who quit during the middle of the season over some NIL payment issues at Boston College, he is a new quarterback against Florida State. And instead of just leaving well enough alone, decided to run his mouth a little bit this summer about the Alabama program. I don't have the direct quote, but it was something to the effect of, Nick Saban is not here to save you anymore. I think that's been some bulletin board material around the Alabama football team over the last month or two. I do too. So would not surprise me if Alabama lays the wood in that one. But still, Alabama, Florida State, 2-touchdown road favorite. This is kind of the return game from that opener they had a few years ago when I believe Alabama was number 1, Florida State was number 2 to open the season, and Alabama just wrecked the Seminoles in that game. So we'll see how this one turns out. All right, Missouri State plus 35 at USC. Missouri State, one of those teams making the jump from FCS up to FBS. They are in Conference USA. This is their first game. They get to go up against a Lincoln Riley-led USC team, and a huge year for Lincoln Riley's tenure with the Trojans. Okay, another monster game here that has kind of an interesting line. LSU at Clemson. Massive game. Again, 2 top 10 teams, 2 national title contenders, hopefuls, dare we say. LSU is getting 4 points at Clemson. Now, again, this is a true road game. This is being played on campus at Clemson. What is interesting about this number to me is great game, obviously, so that caught my attention, but it actually opened with Clemson as just a 3-point standard stock. You have the home field advantage. You get 3-point type of number here for Clemson. This number has actually gone up to 4. And it's done so despite majority action on LSU. So once again, we have a true reverse line movement here where majority action coming on LSU, number moving Clemson's way. Night game at Clemson, really put up or shut up time for the Tigers. They're just 3-7 straight up and 2-8 against the spread in their last 10 games against SEC opponents. They have lost. Clemson has lost 4 straight against the spread against SEC opponents. I think they lost 3 games to SEC foes last year. I know they lost to South Carolina and Georgia. I think there was a 3rd loss in there. We'll see. We'll see if Clemson is for real. I think Clemson's the best team in the ACC. I do think that they're one of the top 15 teams in the country, fringe top 10. I don't think Clemson is a national title contender. Even if they win this game, I don't think that they are. I just don't. I've seen them play. I've seen this core group play together for the last few years, and I don't see it with this group. Very good team, not a great team. I don't think they're going to take the leap, but can they get a monster win here for their resume? LSU, you know about them. They've lost their opener. They have lost their opening game 5 years in a row. That includes last year when they went out to Vegas, I believe it was, and played USC. Wild game out there. Probably should have won that game, but ended up losing as a favorite to the Trojans last year. So just a really, really big game for both teams. It should be a lot of fun. LSU catching 4 points. Then finally, California +3 against Oregon State. This one open -1.5. It's been a bet up to a relative key number of 3. Majority action on Oregon State. Now, normally that would be it. Big Saturday in college football. But because there's no NFL, college football action bleeding into Sunday and Monday. Big game on Sunday, August 31st. Virginia Tech +8 at South Carolina. This one's being played at 3 o'clock next Sunday. This is another game played on a neutral site. This one is also being played at Mercedes-Benz one day after that Syracuse-Tennessee game. This number opened with South Carolina -9.5. Majority action on Virginia Tech, and that line has dragged down because of it. I think this number might even get even lower. I think we might see 7.5, maybe even 7, depending on how some of the underdogs do, how the SEC and ACC both do, and how the bettors do on Saturday as well. Virginia Tech was a big sleeper pick last year in the ACC. Some people had them making it to the playoffs or making a playoff run. Then they lost to Vanderbilt as a 2-touchdown favorite week 1, and all that got flushed down the toilet. They weren't very good. Brett Pry hasn't been very good as a head coach. Really interesting and kind of fun quarterback matchup here, though. Kyron Drones for Virginia Tech, Lenora Sellers for South Carolina. They should both be fun. South Carolina was very good last year, getting some buzz this year. Do they have enough back on defense? They lost a lot in the trenches from last year's team, so we'll see how they do against this ACC opponent. Also on Sunday, Notre Dame at Miami. That's right, Catholics versus convicts, baby. This one opened with Notre Dame. This one is at Miami. So again, true road game. Miami doesn't have a great home field advantage. Like, they're usually kind of a 50-50 split, road team versus a home team, because they're not on campus. It's a big venue where they play. They don't sell out. So there's going to be a lot of Notre Dame fans there. But look, it's still in Miami. Still got to deal with the heat and humidity. And Notre Dame is a firm 2.5-point road favorite in this game. The majority of the action is coming on Miami, but this number has not budged all summer long. If it moves, I think it might move down. I think we might continue to get Miami money line, and with them catching the points. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if this one drops to 2, 1.5, somewhere around there. I will be stunned if this number moves to 3. Miami isn't going to catch 3 points at home, because if it does, then a lot of sharp action is going to come in on Miami and drive it back to 2.5. So I think that there will only be one-way movement on this number. But Notre Dame, CJ Carr was named starting quarterback. He's going up against Carson Beck, making his first start at Miami. So two new quarterbacks for these teams. These rivals haven't faced each other since 2017, and should be a great game to cap off the weekend, 7:30 on Sunday. Well, almost cap off the weekend. There's one more. Monday Night Football. Bill Belichick is back on Monday Night Football, folks. That's right. North Carolina, Chapel Bill. You don't need me to talk about Belichick in North Carolina. You've heard about it for months. But this is the first game of the Bill Belichick era, and this one's going to be a home game against TCU, 8 o'clock on Monday. TCU -3.5, road favorite here. You have Sonny Dykes, you have Josh Hoover, very good quarterback for TCU, going up against North Carolina. Can TCU get stopped? So we have all kinds of questions about North Carolina, right? 70 new players, new quarterback, new system, Bill Belichick, all that new team. We don't know what to expect from that North Carolina team. We kind of do with TCU, kind of another sleeper team in a Big 12 that basically everyone's a sleeper in the Big 12. There's like 8 different teams that I could conceivably see winning that conference, TCU being one of them. Less questions about TCU except the one big one. Can they get stops? Can they get stops? Andy Avalos, former UNLV head coach, former Boise State head coach. He's the defensive coordinator now in his second year there. What will they have to throw at North Carolina? I have a feeling that Belichick is going to go back to kind of his old school roots and be more of a ground and pound team. Can TCU hold up against that? And look, Not for nothing, Bill Belichick was one of the all-time great underdog coaches in the NFL. The Patriots were not underdogs often during the Belichick dynasty, but when they were, Belichick was great getting the points. Will that carry over into his stint at North Carolina, however long that lasts? So that's it. That's our game. That's our lineup for this weekend, week 1 of college football. Don't forget, down in the description, take advantage of that free 60 link that we have. That'll take you to Doc Sports. You can use $60 free, same as cash, towards any handicapper, any package, any sport that you want. Our full season football packages still at that early bird discount rate. They'll only be that way for another 2 weeks, I believe. $749. You can use that $60 discount on our already discounted $749 early bird price. That gets a price under $700, and that is getting you every pick from your handicapper from now to the Super Bowl in February. So really is a great deal. You get our 3-for-1 deal on top of that. So we got a lot of good things going on. So, all right, that's it. Be sure to check back next week for our opening line report. And also be on the lookout for a lot of other great content from the Docs YouTube channel and from yours truly. I'll be back on Wednesday with my SEC and Big Ten report. Thursday is that football release party. Thursday and Friday will be on Docs Daily. Friday, what are the odds with Rafael Esparza? So all good things going on. Until next time, carpe diem and good luck.